Hello and welcome to today's Daily News Decoded. My name is Rajat and today we will be discussing 5 important news articles, and these are: number 1, the enduring commitment to Indo-Pacific; number 2, the tax system reforms in India; number 3, why Trump wants Greenland; number 4, Indian space program in 2025; and number 5, genocide and related conventions. Starting with the first article, that is an enduring commitment to the Indo-Pacific. So, the context of the news article is re-election of Trump, re-election leading to change in the world politics in general and the Indo-Pacific in particular. And there are expectations that the Indo-Pacific strategy this time would be more assertive. Then the elements which are pointing out towards a more assertive Indo-Pacific are the foreign ministers of Quad countries at the inaugurating ceremony, and Indo-Pacific being central to US's strategic calculations. So all these are then reflected in deepening defense, economic and technology cooperation. And this particular topic is relevant from GS2's international relation point of view, wherein the regional groupings, the events around the world which are important for India and impact India's growth and India's foreign policy becomes here important for us. So this is the whole context of the article, and the authors here are discussing about what will be the changes and how has the Trump 1.0 envisaged the Indo-Pacific concept, and then what can be the likely changes in the Indo-Pacific. As we can see from the previous year questions, that Indo-Pacific is a very important theme. It is a topic which is here to stay. So questions will always be coming in the future as well. So do prepare this theme in detail. Now we will start with why is the concept of Indo-Pacific important. The importance. The article mentions 3 important ways in which we can see that yes, the Indo-Pacific as a concept is important. First is the definition of Indo-Pacific. Earlier, US's strategic documents used to mention Asia-Pacific as a term. Indo-Pacific as a term is of a recent origin here, and the change from Asia-Pacific to Indo-Pacific. You can mention these points in your answer so that your answer also has some concrete examples to quote. The first is the change in definition. Then second, we have a structural change. Structural change in the US Pacific Fleet. The name of the US Pacific Fleet was changed to Indo-Pacific Fleet. Apart from that, the Office of Secretary of Defense was reorganized, and there were specific units introduced so as to cater to the allies in the region. Then the third is the institutional architecture of Quad. It is an idea which has materialized in the recent times, but it was in the making for a very long time. In 2017, it was started at a bureaucratic level, at the level of undersecretaries. Then in 2021, it became a full-fledged at a prime minister and presidential level grouping. Now, these are the 3 important reasons mentioned in the article itself. But going beyond the article, that why is Indo-Pacific important? This is where we can show our conceptual understanding of the events around the world. So do use this conceptual framework in your answers as well. The Indo-Pacific as a conceptual framework. Now, Indo-Pacific is home to 64% of world population. It has 20 out of 33 mega cities. Half of the world's trade passes through Indo-Pacific. Two-thirds of world's oil trade happens through Indo-Pacific. It contributes to 62% of world GDP. Therefore, peace, stability, and prosperity of this region is crucial for the whole world. Now, these are the factual points which one should keep in mind. So, these points will give weight to your answer, will give weight to your arguments. Then, how to introduce Indo-Pacific? Indo-Pacific is an emerging theater of geopolitics. It is the power center of geopolitics. The order of Indo-Pacific will define the order of the world. Then the definition of Indo-Pacific. It is a geographical plus a geopolitical construct. You can draw a map as well. Its expanse starts from the east coast of Africa to west coast of Americas. You can put this map into a box. And what is the nature of the Indo-Pacific as a region? It is a contested region. Contested because we have a number of disputes in this region. For example, the South China Sea, the Sakhalin Island dispute, then dispute between China and Japan. Indo-Pacific is home to many major powers like US, China, India, Japan, Australia. Thus, now we are seeing that earlier Indo-Pacific had a segregated view. The Indian Ocean and the Pacific Oceans were seen as two separate entities, but now we are seeing confluence of oceans. There is an integrated concept of Indo-Pacific emerging. And the reason why these two oceans were seen as separate entities was due to the Cold War era and the structural problems of Cold War. But now we are seeing an integrated view emerging here. Apart from that, this concept reflects rebalancing. What does this mean? Rebalancing means rise of many powers in the region. The economy of maybe say Vietnam, India, China, these are the regional economies which are emerging. So this rebalancing is somehow reflective of the importance of Indo-Pacific as a concept. Now the change of attitude of US towards the region also reflects this. Then the concept of Quad also reflects the importance of the region specific. And specifically, now we are seeing that the problems of the world become more acute in the region of Indo-Pacific, these being security and stability, and that too amidst change. The world is going through a global rebalancing. There is a emerging power, that is China, trying to challenge this established power, that is the US, and amidst change it is not easy to maintain peace and stability. And this competition between US and China is going to pan out particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. So that is why this region is important. Then the supply chains. We find that manufacturing is over concentrated in few economies in this region. So over concentration leads to dependence, and dependence in these circumstances is leading to weaponization of supply chains. So we need diversified supply chains. For that we need multilateral institutions, and here we have multilateral institutions such as Quad. Quad has a supply chain element. Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, it has a supply chain element. So that is why supply chains are important, and Indo-Pacific needs diversified supply chains. Then the next, the trust. As more and more economies are getting digitized, as technology becomes important part of our lives, so trust becomes important. So where are these technologies sourced from? Where is the data harvested? So we need trusted geographies and trusted sources of technology, and this brings in the Indo-Pacific as a concept, wherein in future technology collaboration will also become important. So this was all the conceptual framework of the Indo-Pacific region. Now, what are the prospects under Trump 2.0? So it is said that there will be continuity. Because of structural reasons, Indo-Pacific as a concept will continue to hold relevance. So there will not be much policy shifts regarding Indo-Pacific, as the article says. China still remains one of the formidable adversaries, and this was also reflected in the recently held Quad's foreign ministers meet. Then what could be the change? The change would only be now focus more on hard power. So a US will be more assertive one this time, and focus will be on developing credible deterrence in the region, so that there is no adventurism from the adversary, that is China. Here now we have mentioned a practice question. Do analyze the concept from whatever we have been discussing, and then try to answer this question, and do post it in the comment box. Thank you. Starting with the second article, that is overhauling the tax system. The article particularly mentions why there needs to be the next generation tax reforms. What have been the events in the past year, that is 2024, which are leading to, the article mentions certain events of the past year which are impacting the taxation structure, and how are they detrimental for the economy at large, and the article also mentions certain suggestions, that is the way forward, so as to what could be the reforms that needs to be carried out. And the relevance of the article is in the GS paper 3, specifically the fiscal policy part and mobilization of resources, growth, development and unemployment. If one would take a look at the previous year questions, one would always find questions on GST. Every year we will find questions somehow closer to fiscal policy. So these are few questions which we have mentioned. Just take a look. Explain the rationale behind GST. How has COVID-19 impacted GST compensation fund? Then the second is enumerate the indirect taxes that have been subsumed in GST. Also comment upon the revenue implications of GST. So GST is a very important theme. It was one of the major taxation reforms carried out in independent India. So please prepare this theme in its entirety. Do refer to your static notes as well, and take a cue from the articles which are in the newspapers. So this one article presents such value addition. So let's start. The concern. So looking back at 2024, the 55th GST Council took some decisions, and it was, the article mentions the habit of changing tax rates, which is the point number 1 here, the frequent changing of tax rates. Then the overruling of the Supreme Court judgments, which said that the input tax credits should be available to warehouses and infrastructure projects. And to overrule this judgment, the GST Council made some amendments, that is retrospective taxation. And the another thing mentioned by the article is very high tax rates in India. India is only one of the few countries, or it can also be said that India is one of the countries with highest indirect tax rates across the world. Now, apart from these, here we can write certain terms like tax terrorism. Earlier, the finance minister of India in 2014, Arun Jaitley, and even the current prime minister, Mr. Modi, they have repeatedly spoken upon the issue of tax terrorism leading to harassment, tax terrorism dampening growth. So this was the mentality in the early years of independence, that is 1950s. And this was the reason why Indian economy's growth was stunted also. So the article mentions certain reasons why there has been a concern in the recent past. Now the article mentions the impact of these actions. First of all, there is a point on reputation. If we take the Vodafone case, where India and the government resorted to retrospective taxation, which led to international arbitration, and where India had to pay 8,000 crore rupees to Vodafone. So what will be the impact of India as a destination for investment? So this will dampen investment. So tax should be more transparent, it should be simplified, and there should not be frequent changes in the rates, and retrospective taxation as an instrument should not be used. So this will then maintain India's reputation, and actions such as these will decrease the reputation of India as an attractive investment definition. Then what does this retrospective taxation signify? It signifies absence of rule of law. The courts are bypassed using legislations. So a democracy is known by its rule of law. Rule of law is an important concept and fundamental pillar of democracy. And when retrospective taxation is used to bypass Supreme Court judgments, bypass the judiciary, then this leads to again dampening the investor confidence. Then third, if the tax rates are complex, multiple slabs, all this will lead to confusion and misclassification. As it is said, transparency is fundamental to democracy, and misclassification and complex nature of the procedure will lead to more corruption, because it will become paradise of lawyers, paradise for chartered accountants, paradise for revenue officials, and a nightmare for businesses. Then the article also mentions certain concrete examples by showing the tax structure impacting India's economy. The article says that the trade deficit with China was around $70 billion in 2017-18, but right now it is $100 billion. Why is that business is not able to prosper in India? Has the tax structure got to do something with it? So these are pertinent questions which the article poses. Then the share of manufacturing. The share of manufacturing in India has been dropping, and currently it is 15% of GDP. Has the tax structure, as the inverted duty structure, got to do something with it? Again, these are the larger questions being posed. And the sliding of the rupee. Because the Indian exports are not competitive enough, we are not getting revenues, and we are not generating revenues from exports, so there is a sliding of rupee. So these are the impacts which the article mentions. Then Here the article also mentions a cascading or a downward spiral. Liberally use these keywords and the presentations as we have used in the PPTs, and this will enhance the value of your answers. First of all, the current regime with its defects will retard growth. Fine. If the growth is retarded, then this will discourage fresh investments. If investments are less, then that means lower revenue collection for the government. If the revenue collection for the government is lower, then that will lead to increase in tax rates, because the government has to realize revenue. If the tax rates are increased, which will again lead to retarding of growth, and this is a downward spiral or a vicious cycle. But India needs to jump into a virtuous cycle, and to jump into a virtuous cycle we need tax reforms. And what are these reforms? We will be seeing in the next slide. The proposed reforms. What should be the reforms? The reforms, from the perspective of GST, we are one of the highest taxed countries in the world. We have tax rates of 18% and 28%. And this is the reason why a large chunk of tourism, many tourists prefer going to Malaysia and Vietnam, where they say the tax rates are 4 to 8%. Fine. So this leads to business being less competitive. This is one of the glaring examples. So what can be the reforms? One is the broadening of the base. Broadening of the base will lead to reduction of tax rate. Reduction of tax rate will give business confidence. So how can the base be broadened? To bring sectors like electricity, petroleum, alcohol and the beverages under the ambit of the act. And especially this particular step in the reform will require consensus building. The second is rate rationalization. So already there is a ministerial group in the GST Council which is working upon rate rationalization, and this should lead to lower rates for industries such as cement. The cement attracts 18% of GST, and with 18% GST, how are we supposed to realize the goal of affordable housing? So there are socio-economic goals also associated with tax rates. Then technical advice. The GST Council should have a technically advisory committee where we have experts from across the domain, from technological domain, from economic domain. So there should be capability driven approach for the GST Council. Then easing of compliance in the rules, simplification. This will lead to less number of disputes, and the dispute resolution mechanism should be more transparent, and the government should not resort to retrospective taxation. So these are the broad reforms which should be carried out. And based upon the article, we have a practice question. The public expenditure management is a challenge to the government. In the context of budget making process, clarify it. So this is a broader theme of public expenditure management, and taxation falls under this theme. So use the article, make your notes out of it, and use the content here to generate more meaningful answers. So moving on to the next topic. Starting with the next article, that is why Trump wants Greenland. Greenland has been in news for quite some time now, And the President Trump's aggressive push to acquire Greenland has been the current context. And the syllabus point here for us is current events of national and international importance. So the article mentions that Greenland is the world's largest but sparsely populated island, abundant in natural resources, particularly minerals like critical minerals, which are critical to many future technologies, and it is strategically located near the emerging shipping lanes around Arctic. Now we have mentioned a map also here, which we will see in the subsequent slide, that what is the Arctic Sea Passage. And this becomes important in the context of polar Silk Road. And the emergence of polar Silk Road is one of the important examples of climate change impacting international relations. It is expected that in years to come, that Arctic will be free of ice. So this will create alternative sea routes. Then the article mentions that after the Second World War, there was again an attempt by US to have control over Greenland because of the Cold War and Soviet influence. And in that context, the US also had military bases. So one should keep these military bases in mind. These are Pacific Space Base and Thule Air Base. Just the word association of these two military bases. Then the article mentions that competition with Soviet Union and its successor Russia is no longer that keen, but the current context is rise of China and its plan to build polar Silk Route. The Greenland under Trump is now being seen as prompted by the desire to counter the rise and influence of China in the region. Now, Greenland is mineral rich. It is rich in the traditional resources like gold, nickel, cobalt. These minerals are important for batteries and electric vehicle battery technology. These are future industries. And Greenland also has other big reserves of rare earth minerals like dysprosium, praseodymium, neodymium, and terbium. Of the 34 classified rare earth minerals, Greenland has about 23. So this is the reason why Greenland is back into attention. Again, there are other critical emerging technologies in which these rare earth minerals will be used, and their applications have energy and military and consumer applications. Outside of Greenland, these critical minerals are heavily concentrated in China, which controls the bulk of the global production and supply. And this syllabus point is important from economic geography of the world. And then it says the Chinese companies are very actively involved in the mining in that region, and China and its companies now account for 11% of investment in the mineral sector in Greenland, just behind Australia and United States. Now the map here mentions number 1 the northern sea route, and second mentions the northwest passage, and in case there is an ice free Arctic, then we would have trans-Arctic passage. These are keywords which one should remember, and specifically the northwest passage, as it does not reveal that it is part of Arctic. So this can become a question, that northwest passage often seen in news is related to which of the following? So this route traveling along the North American continent, this is northwest passage, and the red colored, which now I am tracing, is the northern sea route, which eventually ends into the northern sea. Now here we have a practice question. Consider the following countries: Finland, Germany, Norway, Russia. How many of the above countries have border with North Sea? And there is a bonus value addition here for you guys, that we have some unique facts about Greenland. First is Greenland has the second largest ice sheet. 80% of the area of Greenland is covered with ice. Greenland has the lowest population density, and during summers, Greenland sun never sets. Then there are no roads connecting to towns and cities. The traveling takes place almost entirely through flights and then fifth, Greenland technically or geographically is part of North America, but it is an autonomous province of Denmark, but Greenland is not part of EU. And then a cultural fact, that 9 out of 10 Greenlanders are Inuit. This is a tribe which lives in igloos. So these are the unique facts about Greenland. Starting off with the next article now. The next article mentions what all are the important space missions in 2025. The article lists out certain important yet to be covered space milestones, and this content is relevant from science and technology, and specifically this theme of space. And in space particularly, two types of themes are present. One is the missions, and second, astronomical concepts. And the concepts in astronomy specifically are such as black holes, gravitational waves, nucleus of stars, etc. But the mission part, specifically, we need to understand the objectives of the mission and which particular organization is launching those missions. Starting off with the article mentions certain key missions. For example, PSLV C60. This mission has certain parts. The third part of the mission was spadex, which has already been discussed in the previous sessions of Daily News Decoded. Please do have a look at those. And then the fourth stage is POEM4. This we will be discussing subsequently in the slides. Then there were also announcements of launching a third launch pad. This launch pad will be in Sriharikota. Sriharikota is an island, and there is an Sriharikota is an island on the Koleru Lake. Then there is next generation launch vehicle NGLV, which we will also be discussing in subsequent slides, and the Gaganyaan mission. This is the human space flight. The article briefly mentions about Aditya L1 mission, and it is the first dedicated solar observatory of the world. Starting off, the spadex mission. This was earlier also completed in the sessions of Daily News Decoded, and this is here they are performing space docking, and this space docking is important if we want to realize Bharat Antariksh Station. A dedicated space station requires different satellites to be launched, and then in the space they are docked together. Docking means the two satellites or two spacecrafts coming together, coming in contact, and then a passage being facilitated between the two. So docking becomes a challenging exercise, specifically in space. So objective is space docking using two small spacecrafts. Component SDX1 chaser, as if this will chase the destination from behind. SDX02, which is the target. Here this technology is essential for India on moon and the sample to return from moon specifically, and then again Bharatiya Antariksh Station, when multiple rocket launchers are required to achieve common objectives. Because the objective itself is so huge and large that one launch cannot be enough to complete the whole experiment. So the launch vehicles are used, wherein specific spacecrafts are launched in parts. So these parts are then assembled back in space. So that is why we need space docking. For example, if we want to build a space station, we cannot take the whole space station, assembling it on the Earth and then putting it in place in orbit in the atmosphere. Rather, the different parts of the space station are first carried out in space and then they are assembled in the space. So this assembling process requires space docking. So that is where spadex mission comes into play. The other countries which have highlighted the ability to space dock is US, China and Russia, and India will be the fourth country. Then the POEM4 orbital testbed. So PSLV orbital experiment module. This was the fourth stage of PSLV C60. After PSLV fourth stage was moved to circular orbit, its fuel dumped, it is being used as an experimental module. And what kind of experiments are being carried out? Number one, relocatable robotic manipulator tech. So this technology monitors the movement and relocation. Then the debris capture robotic arm. So debris in space is very harmful. It can lead to catastrophe, also called as Kessler syndrome, where one debris leads to creation of another debris by collision, and it leads to cascading impact, and a lot of space assets can be destroyed in this Kessler syndrome. So one needs to be accountable for debris. So space debris collection is one of the methods which is highlighted. So space debris capture arm. So this is an experimental technology. Then compact research module for orbital plant studies. Here they have tested cowpea seeds and then tilting of POEM4 stage and giving it an angular velocity. This is a complex test which I don't think is relevant for the examination. Then the other important programs, for example, Aditya L1. Here we have L1 Lagrange point. The important things to know: its core mission, solar science, facts such as coronal mass ejection, working of fusion in sun, lifetime of a star. All these are important concepts which will be subsequently emerging out of Aditya L1. So these are the things which one should know. Then the third launch pad, as we have already discussed about it. Now we will discuss a bit more about the next generation launch vehicle. Next generation launch vehicle. It has mostly three components or three things that we should be aware about. Number one is the payload capacity. Number two, that it focuses to be a reusable launch vehicle so that cost can be reduced. And third, it also tries to bring in green propulsion systems. Starting with the payload. The payload of new generation launch vehicle would be 3 times and 1.5 times to be specific of launch vehicle 3. It is 3 times the present capacity, and then the payload has to be more because we want a human rated launch vehicle. Human rating of the launch vehicle will require addition of other payloads, so that is why we have to have an increased capacity. Then specifically the maximum payload in low Earth orbit would be 30 tons, and at current the payloads which we are using today, we have self-reliance in up to 10 tons of payload in low Earth orbit and up to 4 tons of payload in geosynchronous transfer orbits. So, new generation launch vehicle will allow us to go beyond these limitations, and it will make India more self-reliant in space technology. So, here we have a practice question for you guys. Do attempt and let us know in the comment section. The last article for the day is Genocide and the World's Averted Gaze. The article mentions 4 to 5 important themes which are relevant for UPSC. Firstly, the backdrop of the article is today it has been 80 years of the Auschwitz liberation. Auschwitz was a concentration camp in Germany. The backdrop of the article is today it is 80 years of liberation of Jewish community from Auschwitz, and it is also an International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And there are 3 to 4 important themes which are relevant for our UPSC exam. These being number 1, the Genocide Convention. Number 2, important conflict regions of contemporary times. For example, the article mentions Darfur region in Sudan. Then there is also reference to International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice. So these are the 4 themes which are embedded in the article, and this is how you extract these themes and then prepare your content along those lines. Starting off with the article. The UN Convention on Genocide. The UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crimes of Genocide was ratified in 1948. Genocide. What is a genocide? An act committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a nation, ethnic, racial or religious group. It was the first human rights treaty adopted by UN General Assembly. This particular treaty was adopted in response of the Holocaust and the other atrocities committed during the World War II. The legal authorities under this treaty are International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice. Then few facts about International Court of Justice. International Court of Justice was established by 1945 under the Charter of United Nations, and this is not established by Rome Statute. Which organization has been established by Rome Statute? Please do mention in the comment box. What is the purpose of International Court of Justice? It is a principal judicial organ of the United Nations tasked with settling legal disputes between states, providing advisory opinions on legal questions of international concern. So, ICJ specifically addresses legal disputes between states and legal questions of international concern. Jurisdiction over the ICJ has jurisdiction over states and does not have jurisdiction over individuals. So, who are tried in International Court of Justice? International Court of Justice tries states, and there are 15 judges in International Court of Justice, and among those judges, the permanent 5 countries of United Nations Security Council always have representation. They are always represented in the judgeship. Then members, all UN members, genocide prevention. What is the particular provision about genocide prevention? The ICJ deals with cases where states are accused of failing to prevent, committing or punishing genocide under the Genocide Convention. Now the International Criminal Court. It was established in 2002 under the Rome Statute as a first permanent international court for prosecuting individuals. Now, an additional value added point here is this International Criminal Court and the Rome Statute was materialized due to efforts of various human rights NGOs. So, it is one of the important legal treaties or part of international law where the NGOs have contributed, and it was not specifically driven by the nation states. What is the purpose? To ensure accountability for serious international crimes and prevent impunity. What does impunity mean? That is perpetrators getting away with crimes. The jurisdiction is genocide, crime against humanity, war crimes and crime of aggression. The membership open to states that ratify the Rome Statute, currently 123 members. And it is to note that India has not ratified the Rome Statute. Genocide persecution, the ICC prosecutes individual for genocide as one of its core crimes under the Rome Statute, and this is specifically to protect human rights. The other historical genocides mentioned were Cambodia under the Khmer regime, then Rwanda. Specifically, 2 communities were against each other and one community persecuted, conducted a genocide on the other. Who? Tutsi. Srebrenica, this was in the former Yugoslavia. Darfur, Sudan. Sudan conflict is still going on. So, this is very important from the sake of examination, and Darfur has previously been asked. So, other such regions can be asked. So, the slide now mentions the Gaza conflict. So, what is relevant for us is getting to see the map of Gaza. Where is Gaza located? Where is Palestine as a whole located? Where is Jerusalem? And this is Israel. The Rafah crossing and other specific locations. The context has been that there have been charges against Prime Minister and Defense Minister of Israel of committing genocide on Gaza, and South Africa has reached an International Court of Justice against the Gaza humanitarian crisis. That is why genocide has been in news. Here we have a practice question where certain conventions and declarations have been asked. Similarly, genocide convention is important. So please do attempt this question and let us know the answer in the comment box below. That's all for today's session. Thank you. I hope you must have liked this session. Please do let us know any feedbacks in the comment box below. Thank you.